city expands, gets bigger, you can already see some of the new buildings. So at a certain stage they abandon the city centre and they create new buildings. So the street is a kind of a border, into brackets, between the proper city, by new city I mean, that was built in the 1560s. The guy on your left hand side on the horse is the first Italian king. His name was Victor Emmanuel II. Even if he's the second, he was the first Italian king. He unified the country in 1861, because until that time Italy was divided into very, very small independent states, kingdoms, countries. There were some independent cities like Genoa and Venice. There were some kingdoms like the north of Italy. There was the Vatican in Rome. So it was kind of a patchwork of different states. And then in 1861, the family Savoy were governing about over the northwest of Italy, unified the country. Well, they conquered, better said, the rest of the country. So since 1861 we are one new country. Rome became capital only 10 years later, in 1871, so we are really a very, very new country. Train stations of Genoa, and I say several because there is a train line that crosses the city, which is the connection between Genoa and Tuscany, and there are several small stations which are quite useful. They're quite handy actually if you want to cross the city. But the one on your left, that you will see in a minute, is called Brignole, and is one of the two main railway stations of this city. Genoa is, now I know it sounds kind of a joke today because there's nobody on the road and they're all at home eating, but during the week crossing this city is really a nightmare. The city is 33 kilometers long, so it's a very narrow city but very long, and it takes ages to cross it, and 22 kilometers of the city are covered by the port. So the port area is kind of scattered in the city, and when you leave the port of Genoa, I don't know what time you're sailing, but if it's not raining, the port is very much concentrated in a small area, whereas in this case it's huge. It covers a very long area, and especially you see how the city is built, which means from the water when it was originally created, and then direction mountain, because there is no space. So this is a vertical city, and if you do not like steps, well, you better live in another city, because everywhere you want to go there are steps. It's absolutely incredible, because the city is kind of built on levels, and now they have created some public lifts, public elevators, but not enough. You still need to walk. Not probably. The biggest square of the city, which is called Piazza della Vittoria. By the way, the panoramic wheel on your left hand side was placed just for Christmas, so it's not always here. Piazza della Vittoria means the Victory Square, and in the middle there is a Victory Arch created at the end of the 1920s, which is a monument to the victims of the First War. It was a very, it was a big feeling in the 20s in Italy and Europe in general about all the victims of the First War, how many people died for nothing basically. So the arch was built in memory of the victims, and the entire square was designed the same years at the end of the 20s by a famous architect, famous those days in Italy. His name was Piacentini, And Piacentini was the frame was built. It's the typical architecture of the 20s. Lot of marble, big buildings. Very there is kind of a polish in the way it was built. And on the right hand side, with flowers, because we love flowers in this area, part of our coast is called the Flower Riviera. Always the three caravels, the three ships of Christopher Columbus get represented: Nina, Pinta and Santa Maria. And you see the steps on the side. I told you there's lots of steps. The flowers change according to the season, and they remember one of the most important, well, probably the most famous inhabitant of this city. And if you look on your left from here, you have quite of a nice view. On your right hand side, the exhibition hall of the city of Genoa. They're refurbishing it as well. Among the many things they do here, there is a very interesting yacht exhibition, or better said nautical exhibition, that takes place every 2 years. The location is perfect because it's close to the water, and so the new yachts can. It's not only that, it didn't exist before the end of the 1900s, and they became super famous because of all this family who used to come here. Especially there were lots of Brits. The British community was very well represented in the 1800s. They didn't like the city centre with the medieval streets, very dark, so they used to live outside to build beautiful villas and big buildings, and most of them were passionate for football. And this is the reason why in Genoa in 1896 the first Italian football club was created, and the name of the football club was Genoa, which is a British pronunciation of the city because we call it Genova with V. Genova Football and Cricket Club, and it is Brits, by the Brits who used to live here. The team still exists. There are two. They both play in the Italian league. I'm not very much for football, I have to be honest, but the city is very passionate about that, and as it happens in every city with two teams, it's kind of split, half of it for one team, half of it for the other. I think it happens everywhere, in every city with two teams. On the right hand side, the promenade of Genova, which is called Passeggiata Italia, is promenade of the city. We are a few miles away from the city centre actually, and this is where the Genovese come on weekends for a nice walk, to have an ice cream, to go to the beach, of course. So the area we have seen on the on the western side of the city is the business part. This is where the port is. We are on the eastern side of the city, and this is the most, I don't want to say touristy, but this is for sure this is the nicest one, of course. Now we are we're still in Genoa officially. This is still part of the municipality of Genoa, and we are in a suburb or in an area of Genoa which is called Bocca d'Asse. We're not going to stop, but maybe it could ring the bell to some of you, because do you know some films or books based in Italy on the story of an Italian police commissario named Montalbano? Have you heard him before? Yes? Well, his girlfriend, in the books of course, lives here in the area of Bocca d'Asse, and you can't imagine how many people come here to see the village. What is to visit? Nothing, absolutely nothing. But it became super famous because of that. No, actually, the area is very nice. It used to be a village for itself, and now it's part of the municipality of Genoa since the 30s actually. But you still have the feeling you're in a village, really. It's very different than the city centre. Very upscale, very expensive. It's one of the areas where...
Окошки, да, как у всех, гляньте, как жалюзи такие маленькие.
Okay, now we can slowly head back. And traditions. What happened in Genoa and in many other places is that the city became independent. So Genoa didn't have any prince, any count, any kind of noble government. This is why it was called the Republic of Genoa. Now be careful, the Republic didn't mean it was, his name was Niccolò Paganini. He was born in the city. Actually, he lived for a year. And there is this nice story that every Italians know about Niccolò Paganini. He performed here in Genoa when the theatre of Genoa was built for the king at the beginning of the 1800s. And and the king loved his music so much that he asked him to repeat, but of course he couldn't because he couldn't remember what he had played. And so he said this very famous sentence, Paganini non ripete, which means Paganini doesn't repeat. And the king was very disappointed, so he was banned from the theatres for a while. He was absolutely dancing, but then he was so good and so famous and he went back playing, obviously. But this sentence, Paganini doesn't repeat, Paganini non ripete, was so shocking that it became really a way of saying in Italian. It entered into the everyday speech. So when somebody asks you to do something twice and you don't want, this is quite of a typical sentence to say, no, I don't repeat, I'm like Paganini. In a minute we will be back to the main street. Now we're going to drive a little bit in circle through the city centre before we go to the panoramic point. It's not raining at the moment. In a minute, as long as we manage to cross the street, you will see on your left hand side a huge dome and a very, very big church, actually, very impressive. The church is dedicated to a not very well known saint of the Roman Catholic Church. Her name is Santa Zita, and she is the saint patron of the city of Lucca, which is in Tuscany. Now, what's the relation between Genoa and Lucca? Basically nothing, apart the fact that the community of the merchants of Lucca, of Tuscan, wasn't big enough. So at the beginning of the 1800s, the old medieval church was destroyed and they rebuilt the big one. And that gives you a little bit of the idea of how international, into brackets, the city was. There were merchants coming from all over Europe.
Мы же приехали, да? Сюда получается.
4 класса.
to Genova has a picture of this. And this is the house where, according to the tradition, Christopher Columbus used to live. Now, what Christopher Columbus did is, I think, pretty well known, and it doesn't need any kind of explanation. Christopher Columbus was born apparently in 1455, not to know exactly which date it was and when they were born. So he said that he was born in 1455, but it might not be correct. And what we know about his life is literally very little. We know a lot about what he did. We know that in the name of the Spanish crown, with 3 ships, which were, by the way, paid by Genoa and Florence, but however, with these 3 ships, he left Spain looking for a new route to India, and he didn't know there was a continent in the middle, which was America. Of course, when we said 2 days ago, I had in a Spanish group, I had a guy who wrote a book about Christopher Columbus. Oh my God, he knew everything about that, and especially he believed. And now we're heading to the main square, where some of the most important buildings of the city are. First of all, if you look at it, for example, recently, at the building on the left, you can read the name on top, Regione Liguria. This is our local government building. The building was one of the many possessions of the family Doria, which in the 1700s merged together with a very famous and rich Rome family, the family Pamphili. And so if you visit Rome, you will see several buildings named Doria Pamphili, because the 2 families kind of got together and they became one of the most powerful families of this country. The building on the right is the theater of the name of the king who decided to build it. Starting in 1825, it took 4 or 5 years to build it. Opened, it was bombed during the war, completely destroyed, and it took 30 years to rebuild it. So Felice in Italian means happy, and people here call it Carlo Infelice, unhappy, because there's nothing to be happy about actually.
Сегодня мы в Италии, Генуа.
Як вони ліпили в 17 веке, ти представляєш, там на горах такі дома стоять, а там на скалах прикреплені. Як це може бути?
Какой вид чудесный.
третій прийшов, мабуть. Чи да? А он пару був, да?
Another waving. Lower low. Okay. Good.